So I just wanted to run through the buttering process really fast. My favorite thing to do as I'm buttering is I take the trays out and I like to push this foam pad down all the way. And so the unloaded tray parts come out here. When I've loaded them, I place the loaded pieces in. I can still shut the box because you want to keep light off of the loaded trays, because one of the critical mistakes that I see happening is you load the bracket trays and ambient light starts curing the composite, and if that happens when you go to seat the trays, you end up with a catastrophic failure because the composite gets cured too early. So anyway, I like to put it in here and then keep it sealed every time between tray loadings. So I like to use light bond mediums, my material of choice. Test the first layer. Sometimes from the previous bonding, you'll get that uncured or that cured resin. So you want to make sure you're starting off with uncured composite that's soft. And then I just like to take a little bit. I like to use this spoon tool, and I'm just gonna do a tiny amount on each of these brackets initially. And I just wipe a little bit on each one before I start buttering in. And if you like, this is the technique I use, is I'm holding it between my pinky and my ring finger, and I just dispense a little amount out, and I load just that small amount of the adhesive on all 4 of those brackets. And then I'm going to just butter in that thin layer, and I want to have that spoon actually rubbing the metal, because you need to get that composite integrated into the mesh base. If you don't do that, with direct bonding, when you push the bracket against the tooth, it can kind of seat the composite into the mesh base. But with indirect bonding, you're not pushing that pressure against the tooth, you're seating it from above. And so you never get that integration of the composite into the mesh base, so you have to do it with this instrument. And so I want to feel the metal of the spoon against that metal of the base. And if you put too thick a composite in there, it's just going to go everywhere. So I just do a thin layer that first round, and I'm going to come back with the second layer, and this is where I'm looking at the contour of the tray to see how much composite I want to add. And I'm just going to kind of float, and I like to leave a little bit of a relief area up at the occlusal. So if I have a little bit too much composite, it flows up into that area. So if you look at when I'm doing the second layer, so I've covered the total base, but on the second layer, I'm actually leaving like a little strip right here where the composite isn't necessarily filling in all the way. So if I got a little bit too much, it's gonna actually flow up into that area. So I've got plenty of composite on the gingival. If I've added a little too much, it'll flow up to that area. But you wanna make sure you're looking and you have enough composite to bridge the gap between the tray. It's kind of like an Invisalign attachment template, where you just want to make sure that you're following the contour of the tooth and that you have enough composite in the attachment well to get a good amount without adding so much that you're going to end up with flash all over the tooth. So that's all I'm doing, is just kind of making that assessment, but leaving a little bit of relief right at the very occlusal aspect of it. So if you've added a little too much, you don't end up with flash all over the place. These new trays I really like because they only cover the 2/3 of the bracket, so you can actually see the gingival aspect of it. So if you do get a lot of flash, especially on those anterior brackets, you can actually take a perio probe and clean it up. So don't forget, close the box between sections. So I'm just gonna do that same now process on the remaining sections of the tray. And one really great tip that I saw in an office not too long ago is they actually have their patients watch their hygiene video during this part of the loading process. So they have them watch like a 5-minute video while they're doing this buttering process. If you're gonna do any sort of remote monitoring, you can also have them do their first scan with like the TC or front desk staff or another assistant. Or if you want to tag team this and do one person loads while another one is kind of starting to prep the teeth, you can do that too. Other offices will load these the day before, or the morning of, and they have one dedicated person doing the loading because it can be a little bit technique sensitive. But again, you want to feel that metal of the spoon scraping against the bracket. Just so that's why I don't want to add too much composite, because otherwise you're going to make flash go everywhere. But that way you know you've done a good job of buttering. And then look at the contour, just like an attachment template, making sure you have enough to bridge the gap. The rest of the way for the tooth to connect well with that surface of the bracket. And then you can just inspect from above. And the molars, obviously, the big molar pads obviously need a little bit more composite than the remaining brackets do. And the first couple times you do this, people will tend to add more composite than you might need, so there's more flash. And then as you get experienced with this, you'll find that you kind of titrate down to just the right amount. But on this first layer, just a thin amount of adhesive is better than a thick amount, because you just want to have that really nice glossy thin layer buttering it in. If you add too much, you're going to get too much flash kind of going everywhere. Second layer, you can kind of see I'm just spreading it out laterally. So I've got the gingival covered really, really well. And there's a little bit of I'm actually pushing, so there's a little gap right here where there's a little bit of a void right at the occlusal. So again, if there's any flash, it's gonna flow up into that area when I seat the tray. And don't worry about that if you don't wanna focus on it too much. A little bit of flash is pretty easy to clean up on your first couple of tries. It's more important to get enough adhesive these first bondings than not enough. You can always polish a little bit, but you'll get better and better at these as you get through kind of your first 4 or 5 bondings. And as you do, you'll figure out the right amount of adhesive to add as time goes on. So now I've basically buttered these in. They're ready to go for the bonding appointment. Some offices will butter these the day before, even a few days before. If you're gonna do it a few days before, a lot of times what we'll recommend is putting it in a Ziploc bag and keeping it in this dark box. You want no light touching it, and you want to have it in that airtight setting as well. So hope this helps a lot, and look forward to the next steps in the process.